Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 1 2. Hey there, hi there, ho there. This is RHJunior, RHJunior Reality Check, coming to you live over the internet through a series of tubes known as the boob tube we call YouTube, bringing you another broadcast of my little contribution to the internet, spleen squeezins. One, two, three, four. But then it's not working right. Why is it not working right? Hold on. We are missing audio. Hold on. And the audio is not working. Why is the audio not working? Properties, advanced audio properties. Testing 1 2 3. That's not working either. Properties. Here we go. Hey, hey. Hey, Paul. Hey, Hey, bad friend, take it. Work. This rap session brought to you by the Swedish Chef. Okay, how y'all doing? Hey, we got one person on channel, probably me. We're broadcasting to ones of people. I don't know what to say to that. I really got to get some new, animated graphics and stuff, and more visual stimulation. The problem is that this program is supposed to be able to do slideshows. I've set up slideshows, did all little diddly fiddly things, and it won't run it. And it just sits there and goes, what? Well, this is what you get for open source stuff. I hate to break it to you, but there is some truth to the saying, you get what you pay for. Yeah. My. Okay, do we have other music? Come, just bring my step. Come on. Oi. No, it's not. I have no idea how loud this music is coming through on your side. I'm only got estimates, guesstimates, ballpark figures. Animated background, stars. Hey, guess what? I'll be honest. This one isn't. That's not that. I kind of like that one. That's the one I like. That's really the one I like. I use it all the time. I've got a broken tooth. I've got a remainder of a broken tooth in the back of my lower jaw, and it keeps scraping against my tongue. Makes it hard to talk. You think that it'd shut me up? Nope. No such luck. But, and we have an audience of YouTuber. Hello, YouTuber 1752. How you doing? How's it hanging, man? Far out, yeah. How's it going? Okay, it is 6:37 on a New Year's Eve, 2019, soon to be 2020. Yet nobody's going to see clearly. Music is quiet. I'll turn it up a little bit. Better? It's a particularly quiet song, too. That's the Iraq thing. I haven't been following it closely. Iraq, bunch of quote-unquote protesters We used to call them rioters, uh, attacked the Iraqi embassy. That's called an act of. For those who have forgotten the purpose and the legal standing of an embassy, that is called an act of war. We would be well within our rights to go over there and utterly wreck their day. We're not going to. Not yet. But it is to be hoped that Trump still shows the same spine that he has shown in other matters in this matter. Don't know what's going to happen, though. No clue. I wanted to, I remember I got home from the hospital last week. It's been a week. And I thought to myself, I'll spend this last week, doing up some artwork and stuff and comics and stuff and writing and stuff, to, finish out the year on a big bang. And no. Yeah. It's just lying there. Yeah. Didn't do anything. I tried to get up this morning. I got up at 8:58 this morning. I know because I looked at the time on my computer. Sat down at my computer, got up, did my morning ablutions. Came in here, sat down on my computer, and looked at my computer. It was 8:58. I said, "Yay! I can, start a protective." And then I woke up at 3. 3 in the afternoon. So, yeah. I don't know what to think of myself, really. I really don't anymore. Oh, this is a project I'm working on. This is just a here. Let me turn it on so you can see it. Radio background, header, window capture, ding. We go ding, and we go ding, and the screen just looks at us. Here we go. This is a children's book I wrote ages and ages and ages ago. I drew it. It's a picture book. It's a read to me book. And I just decided to scan it in, and I'm going to open it up. I'm going to spruce up the art a little bit. Spruce up the right, just fix it all up. And put it out through Amazon.com. No sense in leaving, there's no sense in, if you've got a huge archive of stuff, there's no sense in leaving it just sit to collect dust. There's ways that you can set it out there to try and, rake in a few pennies here and there. Like, one thing I've had suggested to me is Shutterstock. Putting, or other, just making it available as clip art. So I'll be looking into that. If you have to live hand and mouth, you better be ambidextrous. Never. When you live like I do, you get you gotta find as many sources of income as you possibly can, which is a problem for me because I do that. I go out there and I look, ooh, what do we got here? And I go off in a dozen different directions. That's the reason that there are like 7 or 8 comic strips on my webpage, and they they never update. Oh, I've got an itchy spot on my leg. Just a second. This weather is drying my skin out something horrible. And when you got bad legs, epidermal type problems, it makes it makes taking self-care an interesting proposition. to say the least. Anyway. Oh, the reviews are out about the last Star Wars movie, Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, and the reviews and the spoilers and everything else. And, yep, pretty much what I predicted, dumpster fire. Complete disaster. They don't know how to write a story. They just don't. And I'm not particularly sure I'm too good at drawing pictures. This is pathetic. This really is. This is just looking back at this and I'm just going, This is terrible. And recent. Let's see here. Open. There should be another one out there. It's not in there. Here we go. You'll remember this one from the other night, and posted that on my. I posted this picture on my page, on my Patreon page, and one of the first comments I got was, "OMG, a nude." A nude what? I knew you was a coming, so I should have baked a pie. But no, well, yeah, technically she's naked, but she's also covered in fur. So shut up. No, seriously though. Really, it was like I posted up and I thought, should I have gone ahead and drawn a bikini on her? That you draw, it says something that drawing a bikini on her seems sort of prudish. You're going prudish? She's naked, dude. Well, you can't see anything, and she's supposed to be covered in fur, and it's just... Let's not kid ourselves here. Come on. There, 1, 2, 3. And suddenly she's modest. Isn't that amazing? I've been really tempted. I've been really tempted to just start saying, that I would do tasteful nudes, just to see what the market would bring. There, ta-da, instant. Needs work though. It's just, the tummy anatomy, for lack of a better term, doesn't quite look right. Her tummy doesn't look right. It doesn't look right either. I'm going to be fiddle-faddling around with that all day if I'll save. Twitter, YouTube, whatever. Just, I feel pooped right now. I feel tired. Scrunched over tummies are very hard to draw. You know, when people bend over and scrunch up their tummy, makes very hard drawing. I'm just trying to hang on until midnight. It's 6:48 now. So we're looking at like 5 hours and 10 minutes of me. I'm starting to wonder. I've noticed that a lot of the YouTube recommended videos consist of things like, 10 common mistakes that new artists make. And I'm really want to ask a few questions about that. What's my opinion on the Trump impeachment? Everything we need to know about the Trump impeachment is said by the fact that now that the Democrats have managed to shove it through now that they managed to shove it through the House of Representatives, they don't want to hand it over to the Senate. All that talk about justice, and they're not too interested in letting justice play out where they can't control it. Don't kid yourselves, It's the same old song and dance. It boils down to they're already trying to. There's talk behind closed doors that they're trying to come up with a second impeachment, file, document, whatever you want to call it, dossier. So they can, if this one doesn't go through, they can try again. Now you got some people that are saying, "How is this different from what they did to Clinton?" Well, because Clinton actually he was on trial already for sexual assault and harassment, and he lied under oath. And the Congress had to decide whether that was qualified for impeachment or not, and it did, and he got impeached. So there was an actual crime committed, in other words. In this case, no crime, no law has actually been broken. What it comes down to is this: Hunter Biden, Biden's little boy, was over in another country screwing around and getting up to shenanigans, and Trump said, okay, we're not going to be giving you guys any financial aid until we get some answers on this. So in other words, they're basically trying to impeach Trump for catching Biden breaking the law. Democrats. This is the way it's been with Democrats ever since, since day one. One law for them, one law for you. And it only applies if they want it to. AKA they're dirtbags. And crap, they can't even turn, they turn on each other. I mean, that at the recent Democrat candidate debates, they had, they try to make big hash because one of the candidates standing up there had as part of his fundraising campaign, he had a bunch of donors invited to a wine tasting party the guy had a wine cellar in a cave on his property. I've never had anybody over to a fancy wine cave. And the guy eventually turned around and said, "Doggone it, I'm the only one." One of the guys up there, "I'm the only one up here who is not a multimillionaire." And he flat out said, "Glass houses, people." Thing it is, Trump is a millionaire too. Yes, he earned his money. He was a trust fund baby. He came. Arguably, he came from a rich family. His father gave him several $1,000,000 to start out with. And everybody goes, "Oh yeah," but then he took that $1,000,000 inheritance and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar inheritance, over 1,000 times what he started out with. Under all the bombast and all the blowhard, all the bloviation and the showmanship, for lack of another term, he is a businessman and he knows how to do business, and he knows how to get people over a barrel basically, when you go into a deal thinking you got the best of Donald Trump, the instant you get a free minute, count all the money in your pocket, count your silverware, and then count your favorite fingers and your nearest relatives, because he'll have pulled a fast one on you, and he'll have gotten it over on you. He is a very good businessman. My favorite story about him is his estate. He put up a 500-foot high flagpole on his property, and the local board of busybodies with nothing better to do, homeowners association, just threw a tantrum and say, "You're not allowed to put up a flagpole more than 300 feet high. Maximum." And he said, "Make me." And basically they went round and round and round, and they kept writing bigger and bigger bill, you owe more, trying claiming that he owed them all sorts of money in fees and fines and stuff, and he wouldn't pay them. And and they had to sit on it and spin. Well, finally, after a while, he said, "All right, here's the deal. I'll pay this amount. What I'll do is that I'll give this amount to the local Veterans Association. I'll give it to them, and we'll make it clear that it's in the homeowners association, for the in the name of the homeowners association, and I'll just put up a regular regular height flagpole, And they said, "Oh, that sounds good," because big tax break, and it looked real good on everybody's paperwork. And so he goes out there and he gives that huge donation. By that time, it was pretty well up there in money numbers, and he gives this huge donation to uh, the local veterans association. Then he goes out and he has his landscapers make a 200-foot high hill on his property. They got out the bulldozers and made a 200-foot high hill on his land. Then he planted a 300-foot high flagpole on top of it. Don't ever think you got the best of Trump. That's all I got to say. Because, no, you didn't. They have been, they've been impeaching him. They've been trying to make him look, they are under the delusion that the American people would get angry at Trump because he was getting impeached. They haven't realized is that the American people, by and large, and this is coming in from surveys and everything else, the American people, by and large, are getting mad at the Democrats over this impeachment. Now it wasn't like that with Clinton. With Clinton, the people were coming out. There were people out there protesting in front. They found out about his deplorable behavior in the White House. There were people out there holding signs that said, "Resign, you swine." People were mad at him, at Clinton. Because in the course of events, Clinton had committed acts that would have gotten anybody else imprisoned. And getting away with it. And that's flying in that flies all over the American people. How is with the Warcrafter or Decker the Warcrafted? How is Azeroth going down? Are they going to go to Azeroth? I really don't know. I might have them show up in Azeroth. I might have because as screwed up as by most perspectives, the writing they for World of Warcraft. The writers, the people who make up the lore, it's something of a dog's dinner here. They've slathered on update after update after update for 10 years plus, and through it all, they've ignored that a lot of it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you've got two. You've got the two sides, which is basically boils down to humans versus orcs and all their associates. Humans and all their associates versus the orcs and all their associates. And it makes no sense how the alliance is broken out. There shouldn't be two factions like this. There should be at least 3 or 4. Because the lore and the history and the ideologies and the religions and the beliefs of the various groups clash, and they should not be together. And having Bayleaf and the crew go to Azeroth. The options are I'd either have to basically rewrite the lore of Azeroth from scratch, or one of the options is rewrite it from scratch to make more sense. It would almost be unrecognizable by the time it got done. Or have Bayleaf and the crew, they arrive and they say, screw all you guys, we're over here on our own. We're having nothing to do with all y'all because y'all a bunch of idiots. Now, Prohibition, Big Oil might have had something to do with it due to the invention of engines that ran on alcohol. That's really unlikely. Okay, there are several reasons why that's unlikely. Okay, first of all, alcohol, grain alcohol, isn't all that great a fuel. It has less. It has less. Well, it basically put, in layman's terms, it has less oomph per gallon than gasoline does, or other diesel byproducts. Two, it's a very unstable fuel. It's very hard on car engines. We've done the gasohol thing here in this country at least 2 or 3 times over the past 50, 60 years. During the 70s, they started selling gasohol to try and make the gasoline go further. They didn't get it. The cars did not get as much mileage out of it, and it chewed up the engines. Three, economics. This time around, back in the 90s, Bush II, W, put out some incentives for, some government incentives for biofuel, which included corn oil diesel and grain alcohol as a fuel. Now, this actually had knock-on effects that happened almost immediately. The instant that the corn farmers got, corn and grain farmers got in on the deal, the price of corn went up especially in Mexico and other Central American countries, where corn is a major part of their diet. Corn flour, corn meal. Much more so, in America, it's mostly flour. That's our thing. But down there, corn. And the price of corn going up just a couple of pennies was enough to start making things get a little tight. And if we had persisted in that, in pursuing that, we would have faced that problem too, because, you're taking food and dumping it down your gas tank. That's not good for the price of food, period. Plus, due to the fluctuations in the grain market, 1 year you'll have a boom crop, the next year you'll have a dust bowl. You do that, and you make your gas tank dependent on that would mean massive fluctuations in the price of fuel. And when you're running on it, when your entire country's running on it, you can imagine that the effect would be amplified. Like shaking the end of a rope. The vibrations at one end are small, but at the other end they're all, womp, 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 all over the place. Same principle. Because at every stage, more of, the problem multiplies itself. This is why you don't want to. This is why you don't want to base, a major part of your economy on a food crop. An annual crop. It's a bad idea. There are countries. There are countries that have tried to use it as a commodity for their currency. For instance, the South during the Civil War, their money was based on a cotton standard. So you can imagine how even if they had, if they had remained as a state, their economy would have been all over the map, as the price of cotton fluctuated. In Orient and China, there was a stretch where they made their money out of pressed tea leaves. And it was blocks of tea you could break off and throw in a teapot and make tea out of. Making your making your money out of a consumable is not a very smart idea. It just does not work out. Now, and for all intents and purposes, gasoline gasoline and diesel fuel, fossil fuels are a very, very large part of our economy. They're not the money commodity, but they're close enough to it that they could pass almost. And the way that petroleum byproducts are produced means that by and large the output is fairly slow and stable. You don't see massive surges in supplies of oil one way or the other. The oil companies blocking alcohol because they thought it might compete for their slice of the car fuel pie. Not very likely at all. Just having two kinds of vehicle on the road gasoline and diesel makes for complications. Having three or four with corn oil and gasohol and grain alcohol and wood alcohol, it make a huge mess. That's something that they didn't, the oil companies didn't have to worry about it because the economy, the economics of it just wasn't there. It's a popular myth. And anytime an alternative fuel is propagated, one of the first myths that pop up is that the big bad evil barons, oil barons, are blocking it for some reason. Frankly, that makes no sense. The old myth about the carburetor that made a car run for over 100 miles to the gallon. Supposedly the oil companies found out about it, freaked, and bought the patent and buried it someplace. Well, the problem is that makes no economic sense. If people had a carburetor, if they had a device that they could put on their vehicle to make it run 100 miles to the gallon, they would not use less fuel, they'd use more. And this is a proven fact. When the cost of travel goes down, people, when the cost of gasoline drops or other costs drop, people, buy more than they ever did before. It's happened every single time that we've had a oil or a gasoline shortage, and then they turn people after the gasoline returns. People turn around and they buy more than they ever did before. And when it's plentiful, people spend it like people buy it cheap and burn it like crazy. If we had vehicles that ran 100 miles to the gallon, people would be traveling from one end of the country to the other on a regular basis. You're just driving back and forth all over the place. A 100-mile-per-gallon carburetor would be the best Christmas gift you could give the oil tycoons. And you may not consider this. Consider how much money it costs to drill oil up out of the ground. If they could find a way to make oil out of trash in your backyard, or throw in a big old bucket of compost and turn it into diesel fuel in your backyard, if that was actually possible, the oil companies would buy it up and start selling that instead. Because being able to turn for instance garbage into gasoline would be billions of dollars they'd save not having to drill the dang stuff up, not having to hunt it down, and drill for it and pump it through pipelines miles and miles long. Oh. Back to the Future didn't have a Dust Bowl. I think you mean Mad Max. Oh, the fuel thing? Yeah. Well, the Mr. Fusion? Yeah, yeah, yeah. If only it was that simple. But no, no. Uh, excuse me, big yawn. Excuse me, big yawn. Yeah. You wanted to ask about some of the endings from my books, like The Audience and Darth Vulcan. I have the general idea for the endings of those stories in mind. I just haven't sit down and cranked them out. I was hoping to have one last chapter of, uh, well, any one of the stories that I'm writing for the year today, but didn't pan out. Only got like about a paragraph. I'm just, you know, no excuses, but here I am. Anyway, really not. I've got a lot of things I really spend a lot of time trying not to think about. Because I'd either fall into, I'd fall into another whining pit of despair, or I'd just go into hysterics and panic. That's the life. Topics, things of literary nature. I just want to say one thing. I don't want to give away the ending of Darth Vulcan completely. But I do want to say that his comeuppance, he is going to have a certain amount of comeuppance, but in the end, he's going to be a little bit like Brer Rabbit in the Briar Patch when it comes down to it. He's going to pull a little bit of a Karma Houdini. I keep promising myself that every day I'm going to get up, have a fresh, solid start, and I'm going to do all these things, and I don't do anything, and I do less than even what I'd get done in an average day, and I don't know. I once sat down and thought about it. I thought if I was to try and straighten out my life, I would probably have to go back 20 years or more. Oh, more than that. 30 years. just to start over. Sometimes I just want to rant and rave at God, because I just want to scream. Well, of all the things to take away from me, why he had to take my health. He took and I wake up and barely in my 30s, and I wake up and my legs start ballooning up, and there's not a thing that I or medicine can do for it, and. It is like going through life. It was already, things were already difficult, but it got to the point. It's like going through life with an anchor around your neck. I think of all the other things he could have taken, it would have just made it worse. But I'm sorry, I am no Job. I do not suffer graciously. Not that Job did, very particularly. But I go into a crisis of faith when I can't find my car keys. Well, I did get a small chapter of Warcrafter done. I want to go back and do some chapters of the older stories that I haven't touched in a while. I'm getting notices this forum hasn't had an update in 2 months, in 3 months, in 4 months. I want to spruce that up, Finish a couple of them. I keep taking on more and getting less and less done. I'm like a monkey scavenging for berries. The harder he looks, the less he finds. But he has no choice but to keep scavenging farther and farther afield, or he starves. Even as he becomes less capable of dragging them home. What was behind that one? Actually, that whole arc with Eiderdown, that was a commentary on another fan fiction I saw. That basically it panned out the way it was described. Fluttershy and several other in that story, Fluttershy and several remedial flyers. It was an alternate history, alternate storyline. Fluttershy and a group of her classmates saved their hometown from a tornado and they got punished for it in exactly the way I described. And they were never recompensed. They were never given, and the writer was like, "Oh well, that's just thinking through passage," and just went on their way writing the. And I'm like, ugh. It was also inspired, This is basically what happens. This is, in a subtler text, it's a description of what happens when the government starts giving subsidies and all these little handouts that are supposedly to help. They end up subsidizing the very behavior or the very problem they're trying to get rid of. A good example is the special ed programs in schools. The school gets XYZ amount of dollars that is supposed to help. It goes into a general fund, but it's supposed to be for their special ed classes. So they can buy crayons and juice boxes or whatever else they need for a class for the mentally challenged in their school. And this results in a market. The school will send in these professionals to go sifting through the school population to find butts to plop in chairs in that special ed class. Because if they don't have enough kids in that special ed class, the funding gets yanked. And, they don't have that. They have case after case of kids who are, incorrectly put into a special ed class just to keep the gravy train going. What's worse is that it's obvious they're not spending the money on the class. The class, the remedial courses and the special ed courses, they're dumping grounds for kids that other teachers don't want to deal with. Get the kid labeled with an educational problem, get him put in a special ed class, and you never have to see him again. Karmic backlash. That's spelled Karmic, by the way. Karmic backlash. That's a popular, that's a concept in Eastern religion. Here's an idea for you. Well, there's a story that you might like. It's a fan fiction called Butterfly. Look it up. It's a worm fan fiction called Butterfly. Taylor Hebert, instead of triggering with the powers that she had canonically, she triggers with this power. Basically, anybody that messes with her gets a run of bad luck. The more they try to mess with her, the worse the bad luck is. It is, it's a complete story. It's absolutely hysterical to read. You'll have to excuse me. I'm sort of scratching at an itch here on my ankle. I'm having to look the link up here. Let's see here. Oh, the name of it, it's not Butterfly, it's It Gets Worse. Let's see here. This is on fanfiction.net. It's also in a couple other locations, but it's by Act 1308. Act 1308 has a lot of really good stories. But, pardon. I don't know if you can see that or not. www.fanfiction.net backslash 11651073 backslash 1 backslash It Gets Worse. But it is, you know, it is a hoot to read. If you don't laugh out loud, I'm going to be surprised. For those who are wondering where the link is in the chat channel. I don't know if you can see it from the recording. That author, Act 1308, ACK1308, he has a load of stories that are great. Some of them are ongoing, some of them are finished, some of them, you know. Let's see. There's one is called "Are You Afraid of the Dark?" where it's a cross between Worm and John Wick. Very interesting story. And he's been updating most of them. So I'm waiting for him to update Wyvern. It's a pretty good one. He's also got It Gets Worse. Hurt my thumb. Pulled the nail back a little bit too far. Ouch. One spot. Jam's got a bit of crumb underneath it. Had to clean it out. Now it stings. He's particularly famous for one story he wrote called Security. It's a self-insert story, basically, where the protagonist ends up in Brockton Bay in the Wormverse, but he doesn't get any special powers. He's just a bog standard, basic, baseline human being, and a security guard at Winslow High School. And it is a really good read. And he manages to take his knowledge of the worm novel and leverage it to save the world. But, excuse me. Yawning again. Anyway, fairly good author, several fairly good stories. In My Hero Academy, does Native die by Stain? Canonically, no. Native does not die by Stain's hand. The kids actually managed to save him. In the stories I've got, okay, I've got one story where Izuku is... goodness, let's see, I've got one where he's a rabbit morph, one where he's a My Little Pony alicorn, one where he's a paladin, one where he's one where he is the next Captain Marvel from Shazam. And I'm pretty sure I've got another story out there floating around here. All of the other ones, you know, let's put it this way: out of all of those, the only one where Stain stands a chance is the one where Izuku is the Rabbit Man. And that's only because he's armed. Now, it's darn music. I don't know what the hell's up with this. In the one El Arira, Izuku basically has a very enhanced version of Peter Parker's spider sense. He's also a trained martial artist, so he would be a match. He would be a fair match for Stain. The rest of them, it's going to be a ridiculous curb stomp. Do you have any other questions? Feel free to ask. Let's see, who have we got in here? We got two people in channel. It's 7:46. I'm feeling like crap. I ain't got no energy, man. I've been chug-a-lugging Tang. Man, I'm angry about all that food I lost. You'll have to excuse me. I'm already running out of juice. This is incredibly annoying. Just running out of steam this early in the game. I've only been on for an hour. Day before yesterday, I managed 4 hours, and of course, I slept most of that day. I'll tell you, it's pretty. It's getting hammered home to me. It's not good for people to live alone. Just you know, you need somebody there. You need to, a marriage is one thing, but also, a roommate, a friend, somebody, you know, a sibling, somebody to share your space with, somebody to motivate you to stabilize you. This is how crazy cat people get started, or crazy dog people, because they'll try and substitute a pet for human interaction, and it's better than having a pet is better than nothing, but it's not a substitute. I look at my life. I've reached a point I never thought bottom of the barrel. Never thought I would uh, implode this far. Never thought I would get to this point. I always thought I'll never end up like that, and here I am, looking up at the underside of the barrel, going, well, here I am, just where I said I'd never go. Yeah, I intend to stay as long as I can. It's nice to talk to you too. Thank you. It's kind of sad how Star Wars has ended. You got all these people that are you don't realize how long ago it's been though. You know, 1970, 1979, I think was the year that Star Wars, the very first Star Wars aired. So that's like how long? How many years has it been? Calculator, calculator. 19792019. It's been 40 years. 40 years. It's been 40 years since Star Wars, since the Ghostbusters, since the action movies like Rambo and Schwarzenegger and the Terminator and all this other things. What we're seeing now is you didn't see this back in the 80s. You didn't see, to my recollection, you didn't see people in the 80s looting, just plundering the franchises and the success stories of the 60s. You didn't see them going back to the 60s or the 50s or the 40s to rip somebody off and rehash somebody else's creation. You didn't see that. Heck, y'all didn't see too many original movies that were about the times of the 40s. You didn't see any war movies. Like real war movies. Of course, you had MASH. MASH was, good grief, the Korean War. The TV show MASH lasted longer than the actual Korean War did. That's a lot of stomping for an anti-war sentiment. They tried to make spin-offs of it because the characters were so well loved. Aftermash didn't work. But you didn't see people trying to revamp franchises from the 1940s in the 80s. But that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing people trying to, and they don't know what they have. They don't know what they got their hands on. The people that are mucking around with it now, what are they, 30 in their 30s? They probably weren't even, they were probably in diapers when most of these franchises they're buggering up came out. The only chance Star Wars has now is if it gets abandoned, somebody else picks it up and pretends that the prequels and sequels never happened. That's the only way they're ever going to salvage it. They're doing that with Ghostbusters. They're pretending that Ghostbusters 2016 never happened, and Godspeed on them. You know. Now, I'm one of the rare few people that think. Now, I personally think that they did a much better job when they remade RoboCop. I think they did a better job with the remake. I'm one of the few people that does think that. But that's just me. Considering the original one was supposed to be a parody, and most people don't pick up on it. Mm. Well, got people that don't know what they have, they don't appreciate what they've got, and they uh, trashing it, trying to uh, milk the bull, as it were. They don't know what they're doing. Even some of the shows I liked. I mean, like My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. That's a rehash of the '80s show, but Lauren Faust, she did something original, and she made it her own, and she succeeded at it. And quite frankly, it's not hard to see why, because the original stuff, in both those examples, RoboCop, My Little Pony, they were back when they were made, they were throwaways. They were just something that they made. Nobody was taking it seriously. Nobody really exerted themselves to try and make it quality. Let's not fault companies for wanting to make money. That's what companies do. Companies and corporations are designed to make their shareholders a profit, a reliable profit. And that's the problem when it comes to creative endeavors. You can't make creativity reliable. They want a formula. They want a recipe. They want they want those they want a secret blend of herbs and spices, or the secret recipe for Dr. Pepper or something. They want a recipe they can go to and use over and over and over and get the same results. But that doesn't work. Sometimes creativity is like catching lightning in a bottle. And it takes a very deft touch and a very passionate person to recreate, or better yet, improve on what's already there. But they don't want passion, they want predictability. They don't want a fancy steak dinner, they want the McDonald's hamburger because they can make a million of them and sell them cheap. Not to bash McDonald's. But it doesn't work like that. If you're going to invest in creativity, and most of the people that are deeply invested in our entertainment industry aren't there for the sake of the art. They're there for the sake of their politics. Uh, Ever since it was invented, ever since it was created, Hollywood has been a mark. It's been a target. It has been a asset, and there are political movers and shakers and movements that will sell their immortal soul to keep control of it. And you dang well know who I'm going to be talking about anyway. So I'll say it. The hard left. Everybody mocks Joe McCarthy. But what nobody likes to talk about is that it came out Joe McCarthy was right. He was telling the truth. There were communists, dedicated, card carrying members of the Communist Party up and down through Hollywood. There were dedicated, card carrying members of the Communist Party up and down through our government. And they were working hand in hand to undermine the American system and the American values. And they're still there, too. They're fat, lazy, and stupid and they've spent the last few decades snorting cocaine off of hookers' bellies. But they're still there. A big company that was dedicated to money would actually make good movies. You get a big company run by a handful of people who are passionately devoted to a political ideology. Everything else is going to come second, even profits. We see that in the Star Wars movies. We see that in the Ghostbusters 2016. It was, both of those projects were taken over by militant feminists. They lied their way in. They convinced everybody. They convinced every fool in the system that they were there for, quote, equality. They weren't there. They were there to, promote the religion of vagina worship, basically. And they took over, and they turned both of them into screeds for hardcore leftist feminist ideology. And don't be too surprised, because feminism and communism waltz along hand in hand. Because feminism, one of the things feminism is dedicated to, is the dissolution of the traditional family, or let's just call it the family. So they can go out and run around in the field and do as they please. And the communist, socialist, Marxist system is just as dedicated to the downfall of the family and of the traditional family unit, because once they pull that down, nothing else is going to take place of the state. They want the state to be first and first and foremost. For all they talk of a classless society, Marxism creates a system where there's two classes. One, the state, and two, everybody that is under its boot heel. It's the default setting of Marxism. And they want everybody in the village to be devoted to the Marxist ideology, to the state. With Rabbit Deku, All for One got what he wanted, so what's he doing in that one? What did All for One get? It's still the same story. It's just All Might is still looking for an heir, or he has found an heir in the form of Miriam. All for One, the villain, is out there still plotting and planning. No, never believe that. Now, when somebody, whether you're talking in a story or in real life, when a villain proclaims, when a villain murders and destroys, and then claims he's doing it for a noble cause, don't believe him. A child shouldn't fall for that. It's very obvious that any blibber blabber about equal rights or building a better world it's kerfluffle. It's bull. It's nonsense. It rates right up there with all the people for the children. No, they're not. They want to build a new world order with them at the top. And anybody who observes All for One's actions rather than any sermons he preaches, can see that that's the world he wants, a world under his boot heel. There are other groups. There are other groups in My Hero Academia that haven't appeared yet. They're in the manga. They're not in the anime yet. They haven't been animated those episodes yet. That are genuinely, they're counter-revolution. What they want to do is, have groups that want to genuinely have a revolution and see the system as it stands overturned. That genuinely want to change the status quo for people with quirks and people without quirks and so on and so forth. But All for One isn't one of them. Demonstrated in his actions. Adolf Hitler could stand up there and bullshit about how he just wanted, prosperity for the German people. But look at what he actually did. Now, in El Arira, in the one with the rabbit, I propose that they had already overturned many of the quirk laws, the pettier ones, the silly ones that they obviously couldn't enforce. Because it just struck me as, for at least one story I was going to go with that premise, because first of all, never make a law you can't enforce. And in that society, you couldn't possibly uniformly enforce a law that forbid people to use their powers when nearly everybody has powers. Especially not when for some of them, using those powers are necessary for their day-to-day lives, or even to keep living. Are they going to tell a fish man to stop using his gills? It's obviously, a holdover from when there was proportionally very few people with quirks, and a large majority of frightened quirkless people who wanted, to get control of the situation no matter what it took. So it's the quirk laws as they're presented canonically in the comics. There's something that should have dropped off the radar long before Izuku was born. And probably would have, canonically, if it hadn't been for All for One being such an ass and causing so much trouble. What makes you think that he has to, there's no reason that he has to preach anything different? Look, I point you to feminism as a movement. Western females, Western women enjoy not only equality, but a standard of privilege, a legal, social, cultural privilege unseen by any minority or group in the history of man. And yet they still are out there in the street screaming about how they're being oppressed by the patriarchy. Misogyny, patriarchy. They are shown favoritism in hiring, in criminal law, in divorce law, in social circles. Uh, they enjoy ridiculous levels of privilege up and down the scale. And even in even something as basic as physical confrontation. God help you if a woman punches you in the face, because if you take a swing back, every man within a 20-yard radius is going to jump on your back. How dare you? You don't hit a woman. Tell the woman to not hit me, and we'll be fine. But you get my point. Women in Western civilization enjoy obscene levels of privilege and abuse it daily, and are still out in the street marching and protesting and screaming for more. You know, even in the best of societies, in the most egalitarian of societies, somebody preaching about how they're oppressed is going to be able to draw a crowd of the disgruntled, whether they're justifiably disgruntled or not. That's why you see feminists marching by the thousands, ripping off their shirts and screaming in outrage that they're required to cover up in public. That's why you see, every time a thug jumps a cop and gets his ass kicked, you have black people out in the street. They didn't do nothing wrong. This is why you can have Muslims stabbing Jewish children in the face, and the next day, people in the Islamic world will be out there screaming bloody murder about how done with the Crusader. Appealing to appealing to the violent and lawless sense of entitlement. That's child's play. What do I have most fun writing in all my books? Well, there are certain scenes that I have. When I come up with a story, I always have certain scenes that I look forward to. To writing out. The tent pole scenes, the ones that make the story move along. I have to admit, I do like writing the scenes where various villains get their comeuppance. I'm sort of notorious for it. I especially I shout. I guess you call it a little bit of Schadenfreude, but I love writing scenes, especially that that the audience really wasn't expecting how that was going to turn out. I really love taking people with avid fandom expectations and yanking the rug out from under them. Like in a one scene in Darth Vulcan where everybody in the background in the forums, ooh, here comes what was his name? What was the Minotaur villain's name? I can't believe I've forgotten. I've forgotten what the name of the villain is. Just a second, let me check something. Tyrek. And everybody was, anticipating, oh, Tyrek's gonna kick Darth Vulcan's ass, and then I had Tyrek show up, and Darth Vulcan pulled out a blunderbuss, basically, and blew his head off. Just, whoosh, boom. End of fight. Everybody was like, oh. Some people got mad about it. How'd you do this? Oh man, when I made fun of the Star Trek, and all the ridiculous tropes in it, and and all the hippie commies in space, that's all it was. Let's be honest here, and it got worse with the Next Generation, and I looked at that and I went, ugh. And I made fun of it, and the fans and the Trekkies just absolutely lost the plot, just went off the rails, went crazy over it. You're making fun of Star Trek. Why are you making fun of Mike Kirk? Why are you making fun of my husbando? Maybe they're not that bad. It's like, oh yes, they are. You want me to list episode and how far into the show it happened? You hate what they did in canon in one. Which one are you thinking of? Which canon are you thinking of? Okay, there's several canons we're talking about. Talking about Worm, talking about Star Trek, talking about Star Wars, talking about My Hero Academia, talking about you hate what they did in canon in one. Will I like yours better? The My Little Pony one. I'll say this much. I haven't watched My Little Pony since season, I think 5 or 6. It reached the point where I was turning on every episode, wondering, what are they going to ruin for me now? And that's no way to enjoy a show. So I'm sort of off in the wilderness doing my own thing. The first Minotaur. What are they? Have they had an episode with a new Minotaur or something? What makes me feel happy? That's a moving target. There's a lot of things that make me happy, a lot of things that make me unhappy, a lot of what makes me happy? Having something fixed, not having something resolved. I've got a lot of things that are constantly in the air that I'm constantly worrying about, and I've got holes that I'm digging that are they're just getting deeper, and when something works out, when the rare times when something works out and something gets taken care of, something resolved, something gets fixed, it is a tremendous sense of peace and well-being. Let me tell you. I'm looking at these things. I'm looking at all the things that I've started that I may never finish, and that's a pain to me. That's shame to me. I look at the state of my home, and I don't have the talent, the tools, the physical capability, or the money to fix. And I have to sweat it. Every day is a sweat. Is the leak in the roof going to turn into a hole in the ceiling tomorrow? Is the broken floorboard going to give way under my heel tomorrow? How much longer before how much longer before this? How much longer before that? I can only imagine what it's like. It's once in a blue moon, I will make an actual finished accomplishment, clean a room, patch a hole in the wall, fix something, get an outstanding debt paid off, get a project, actually genuinely finished and off to its customer, and there are days I just wonder what is it got to feel like to get everything done, to know everything is going to be done, and not have to be afraid of that the clock is ticking down, and it's on so many things. Completion, that makes me happy. Crocodile Dundee accent. What do I think of the different types of accents? I think they're darned hard to write. Uh, I've always been fond of the Irish accent. Always liked it, the way it sounded. The Asian accent, the Asian accent, nothing against the Asian people. I want to get that straight. I want to get that absolutely straight. But the Asian accent, just for me, it's so aggravating. there's just too much of a divide between English and Asian Germanic and Asian languages. And listening to a Japanese or Chinese or Korean person trying to speak English, and they can't even pronounce the R's and the L's and all the other just you know just oh, I could only imagine how grating an American accent is to a Chinese person. Cause I think it's because in the back of my head, I'm hearing somebody say, you know, they're pronouncing all their L's as R's, and they're adding extra syllables to the end of every word, and I'm like, Sprina squizengaza, and I'm like, and the back of my brain is going, you're putting me on. You have got to be putting me the hell on. Because there's no way that you can hear me say spleen squeezings and hear an R. But there it is. There you have it. Some accents great. Some are pleasing to the ear. Some sound nice but are incomprehensible as hell. I have listened to the people from, I've listened to people from South Africa speak. And whatever you said sounded absolutely lovely, but I have not a blazing clue what you just said. Or you listen to a Scottish person. When they really get going, they sound like they're three sheets to the wind already and stone cold sober at 9 a.m. It's like Robin Williams put it. And he did a whole riff where he imitated a Scottish person speaking, and he's pretending to be himself, just standing there. Yeah, I get it. I get it. British slang is interesting, but oh man, get away from me with that rhyming slang stuff. You're talking to me, and I'm like, I'm not up for a word matching game right now. It's like reading a tropes page where everybody's got every trope is like two or three uh, inside references away from the source, and you're trying to figure, I don't get this. Oh my! It's only 8:30. I've been at this 2 hours, and it's 8:30, and I don't think I'm going to make it to midnight. I really don't. I don't. No. There's one fan fiction. If you like One Piece, the anime, there's a fan fiction called This Bites. It's an SI. It's a self-insert. Da 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 da. Aren't they all? And he ends up in the world of One Piece, and he ends up with a pet snail, an audio snail, I think they call them. He doesn't get one of the magic devil fruits. The snail does. So, interesting premise. It's a fun read thus far. Ow. Oh, got a bad tooth on the left side. Remains of a bad tooth on the left side of my mouth, irritating my tongue. But okay, what are we looking at? I have no freaking idea. Pardon. So many things. I'm a little disappointed that some of my other stories haven't made it onto TV tropes yet. That's how I measure my popularity, whether I've got something up on TV tropes or not. They don't like me there. Some people don't like me there, you know. Well, I'm very outspoken, I'm highly conservative, I'm Christian, and I'm very opinionated, and he uses his stuff as a soapbox all the time. I'll say this: I'm so tired of people accusing me of using a soapbox. Okay, okay, bitch. Uh, Excuse me, but maybe you haven't noticed that you've been using the television, the newspaper, the comic books, the magazines. All of them are soapboxes for your leftist, socialist, Hollywood bullcrap. For all you hippy dippy bullshit. Yeah, I'm just so tired of it because if I was if I was a rabid, frothing mouthed social justice warrior, femo leftist, right down the line, and I was exactly the same way in my story, then they wouldn't notice. They wouldn't notice. They wouldn't notice any more than a goldfish notices that it's floating in water. It's their natural environment to live in an echo chamber, to live constantly marinating in Hollywood college campus Marxist drivel. To have Hollywood actresses whistling in their ear about how sensitive and enlightened they are because they have three genders and five sexes. And it's just to constantly uh, be patting themselves on the back until they nearly dislocate their shoulders. About how enlightened and compassionate they are. And how xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, phobophobic, everybody else is. They can take they can take some of the greatest uh, fran you know books and movies and franchises dating back over a century and pervert and distort them into a loudspeaker for their ideology, and they're completely oblivious to it. But if anybody so much as expresses a right wing or conservative outlook about anything, woot, 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 sound the klaxons. They've been oppressed. Help, help, I'm being repressed. He touched me in my sensitivities. Some days you want to pin him down and choke him to death with a Chick-fil-A sandwich. It's easier to tell somebody what makes you angry than to tell them what makes you happy. That's our lesson for today. I'm not a very good Christian. I'm a terrible example. I'm not very loving or kind or compassionate. I'm not. I'm not very forgiving. I struggle with forgiveness. I have my indulgences and vices and sins too, and I fold like wet toast to temptation. And not even in a really interesting way. Give me a break. But here I am, you know. Thank you for the compliments. I appreciate them. You know, I keep saying tomorrow I'll wake up, I'll have, when I have, I'll be, full of vim and vigor and energy, and, I'll get a good, hearty start to the day. And I'll pick up from there. And I don't wake up full of energy anymore. I wake up tired. I, I remember, kids think they're tired when they wake up in the morning. Kids think they're tired when they wake up in the morning. Not even a chance. The kid, I miss being not tired. When I was in therapy, I spent most of the day just lying there sleeping. Miss my sleep schedule all the heck. Uh, Now let's talk about something else. That's a good idea. Uh, News. Uh, a bunch of Iraqi Muslims attacked the American embassy in Iraq. Screaming death to America. In other news, paint dries. Grass is green, water's wet, sky's blue, and the sun rises generally in an eastern direction. Now, it's easy to understand the attraction of the idea of Fortress America. Of us. We've got half a continent here. We do. We got half of North America, more or less, and it's a nice, warm southern half. The idea of just building a fence all the way around and telling everybody outside it, screw y'all, we're just going to mind our own business. Just to not have to deal with their crappery. The world doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Even if we could build even if we could, you completely isolate ourselves. It wouldn't be but a matter of time before their bombers were flying overhead. We exist, and that's enough reason to torment us. That's been America so much. Just leave us the hell alone. America's slogan, forget e pluribus unum, forget all this other snazzy sounding. Tell me how to say leave us the hell alone in Latin, and then we'll talk. That's why, that was, we didn't want to mess with anybody. We didn't want to pick a fight. We deliberately did everything in our power to try and avoid a fight. That was the whole point of the Pilgrims coming here. The Pilgrims came here because they didn't want to, they didn't want to be persecuted for their beliefs. They didn't want to have to fight all of European society and all of European royalty just to be left in peace. They came all the way over a whole damn ocean. They crossed the Atlantic in a time where that was the equivalent of hitching a ride on the space shuttle, and crossed over to America and set up a community. Just leave us the hell alone. That's all they wanted. And they actually managed to get along peaceably with the Native Americans too. That they actually managed to sustain for at least 2 lifespans. But that changed. But and then the Revolutionary War came up. What was our first flag? The Gadsden flag. A snake. Don't tread on me. In other words, just leave us the hell alone. And they couldn't leave us alone. They had to come over here and they had to take our money and our women and steal away our rights, and just couldn't frickin' quit poking at us. Couldn't do it. And so we had to have a revolution. We had to throw the British out of the country. And then we turn around in 1812 and they come back and they're messing with our crew members on our sea vessels, our seagoing ships, stealing them, dragging them off, basically as slaves, conscripting them into the British Navy. That's what started 1812, the War of 1812, and we had to whoop their ass all over again. The British are slow and dim, but they eventually get it beat into their skulls if you work at it. And just leave us alone. The Spanish American, the Spanish came over here and gave us, come on, leave us alone. The Civil War was just one half of the country going, okay, we're sick of y'all, we're going off on our own, just leave us alone. And it's a damn crying shame that we couldn't follow our own standards and leave the South alone. Because no, it was not about slavery. If it had been about slavery, if it was about slavery, why didn't the North invade the South until the South tried to secede? They didn't care about the South having slaves. They sure as hell cared about the South trying to leave. And somehow, the right that our founding fathers had to leave the British Empire didn't apply to the states that wanted to leave the American Empire. That was the hypocrisy of it. They whipped up a nice propaganda storm about ending slavery, and then didn't. And for all the bloviations of politicians, the common people were just leave us the hell alone. And, the North dragged the South back by its hair, like a beaten housewife. Then along comes World War I. We just mind our own business. We sit over here and we try and mind our own business. We don't want none of that. We don't want none of that. And boom, the next thing you know, we're right in the middle of it. We go over there, we fight the war, we come back as fast as we can and try and leave Europe to its own devices. And the next thing you know, here they come again. You can do what, we said, we'll do what, we don't want any mess with you. Just leave us the hell alone. And they bomb Pearl Harbor. And here we come, we have to kick everybody's ass all over again. And no matter how many times we plant a boot up somebody's ass, sooner or later we got to come back to where we were before and beat them down again because they won't leave us the hell alone. All the wretched empires of the world could be, just boogieing down like Belushi if they just leave America alone. But every rag-headed tin pot dictator in the Middle East, has got to pick a fight with America. Half the problem is that we actually try and send help to them. All that charity, all that domestic aid, all that foreign aid to the Middle Eastern way of thinking, that is tribute from a lesser nation to a greater one. It's rooted thousands of years of culture in that area, that you pay tribute to those you see as superior to you. And so when we're sending all that aid over there, they see it as proof that the Islamic Caliphate is superior to us, and they decide they're going to come over here and we'll come over there and kick your ass. And so we have to curb stomp another third world nation into a mud hole just to be left in peace for 5 minutes. If they just leave us the hell alone, they could do whatever the hell they wanted with the rest of the world. But no, they got to drag us into everything. And then they find out this dog ain't chained to the porch. Over and over again. Same story. I'm sorry, I don't know what got me wound up like that on that. It's a constant thing in this world that we can't be left in peace unless we go out every so many years and beat the absolute everlasting mother-loving shit out of somebody. Then the rest of the world looks at the crater left behind and says, whoa, they ain't messing around, are they? And they give us another 5-10 years of relative peace and quiet. There's one guy I read. He was a humorist, writing a blog. It was basically comedy, but he proposed that what we ought to do is every now and then we ought to go out and nuke the moon. Just take one of our nukes, launch it at the moon, just so that the whole damn world can see what we can do when we're pissed off. The more I've seen the word, I'm starting to agree with the guy. We ain't doing nothing with the nukes right now. Might as well scare the crap out of a few hundred nations that don't seem to have their heads pulled out of their rear ends yet.
Why the dark or the shadow is always bad. Not sure what you're referencing. Yeah. A couple of nukes up there wouldn't do much damage at all. I don't think it would even increase the background radiation. The moon's got no atmosphere. It's blasted 24 hours a day by direct radiation from the sun. All we'd probably do is make a couple extra craters. But the flash, the flash bang would be impressive. Hmm. Why is the dark always portrayed as bad? Well, by and large portrayed as bad? A very simple answer. We're creatures that use our eyes more than any other sense. And for us, the dark is dangerous. And instinctively, we know that evil hides where it can't be seen. There was a movie that I wanted to talk about. I just remembered that. There was a movie that came out a few years ago. It was called Chronicle. Now, the premise of this movie was that three teenage boys, find this weird asteroid that gives them telekinetic powers. And at first it's it's a found footage movie, which means it's made to look like it's been spliced together out of footage from TV cameras and movie cameras and home camcorders and cell phones and what all. It was spliced all together to form a chronicle. Duh. And the story goes that these three guys find this power, and at first they're just goofing around. It was a movie out in 2012, so it's been a while. It's been about it's been almost 10 years. Well, 8 years, pardon. And anyway, but the thing of it is, okay, the middle guy is, the popular guy at school, and he's a friend to both these guys. This guy's a slacker and easygoing. These two guys are fairly, easygoing. They're popular. They got it fairly well. They're from fairly wealthy families, and this guy over on the left isn't. He is actually this first guy's cousin, and he is very he's an outcast at school. He is bullied remorselessly, and at home he is abused by his drunk of a father. His mother is sick, dying of some unnamed disease. and she's the only one that shows him any affection, but she's bedridden. And basically, the movie follows this first guy's decline. The bullied kid's descent into madness. The powers they have, they get more powerful as time goes by. This photograph right here is of him crushing a car with his mind. And and eventually it kind of ends in tragedy, because the middle guy, he dies in an accident. He gets, they go flying and he gets struck by lightning, and everything basically just falls apart for him, for the bullied kid. And it gets worse and worse, and he finally goes on a rampage and starts tearing up Seattle. And his cousin finally has to stop him. He has to kill him to stop him. It's a very good movie, and it's a very good watch. But I think that everybody's talking about it's a subversion, and that teenagers shouldn't have all that power. And I'm like, talk about missing the point. Utterly missing the point. 2 out of these 3 kids never harm anyone with their power. And in fact, one of them goes on, after it's all over, after the tragedy is done, he goes on to be a genuine hero. The story is basically they miss the meta point, the meta context, is that this entire thing is made up of found footage, and it's a chronicle of this one boy, the main protagonist's descent into violence and insanity. And they missed the whole point. The meta point is that they knew. Everybody knew. Everybody had to know. The footage is supposed to be from police police body cameras, and hospital cameras, and security cameras, and school cameras, and kids' camcorders and their cell phones, and everybody knew that this kid was being bullied, that he was being horribly abused by his vicious drunk bum of a father, that he was teetering on the edge of suicide, as it was. And nobody did anything. The kid lived in, the point was, this kid, no excuses. Society had no excuse for how they failed this kid, because society knew. This wasn't happening in some secret closet someplace where nobody could find out. It was out in public. Everybody saw it happen. Everybody was filming it as it happened. And still, everyone, even his best friend and his cousin who loved him like a brother, they didn't pay attention, and they didn't do anything, and they fell down on the job, and the kid goes completely off the rails, because he's basically treated like an animal by everyone, even his own family. And it is a very unsubtle raised middle finger to the, oh, how could this have happened? How could we couldn't have possibly known? These people like this, kids, in crisis like this, people in crisis like this don't grow up in a vacuum. Now, this is, the Joker movie that came out fairly recently. It's just another variation on the story. It's told from the perspective of the madman himself, but and he just and it just same story. He gets in the movie The Joker, the guy that becomes the Joker, he's marginalized by society, and all the and every support network that human beings rely on to survive fails him. It just cracks underneath. It just falls apart underneath him. And this is, again, this is not excusing a single thing that the kid does. You do something, it's your choice, it's your decision to do what you do. But we're playing dumb when we see when we see people, when we see kids completely lose it. And we pretend we don't know how it happened or why. We pretend that we didn't see it. The nuke in, yeah. The general principle is that each of the main six has to be pushed to an extreme. Straight to the wall before they reach a transformative state. Pinkie Pie's the only one that's left, actually. In that particular story, the audience. Okay. All right. It is 9, and I really don't think I'm going to make it 3 more hours like this. So I'm going to go ahead. Okay. I'm going to wish you all an early Happy New Year. Okay? But for now, I'm going to have to call it a night. Because I am tanked. So, I will see you all later. if as always, if you can spare a dime, it would be greatly appreciated because every little bit helps. There's a PayPal button on my homepage, www.rhjunior.com. Down along the right hand side, there's a Patreon link and a PayPal link if you'd like to throw something in the hat. Because as always, it's touch and go with everything. I really would like to get my trash service started back up again so I can get some of this trash out of this house, among other things. But I will see you all later. You all take care of yourselves and you have yourself a good night.